Some movies exist because someone believed in them. Others exist because someone believed in the money they could make. Space Jam: A New Legacy belongs firmly in the second category. I won't pretend I expected a masterpiece. The original Space Jam wasn't one either. It was an uneven film with three reasons to exist: Michael Jordan, the Looney Tunes, and Bill Murray showing up like it was the most natural thing in the world. That was enough. What I didn't expect was for the sequel to arrive 25 years later without taking even that minimal premise seriously. Space Jam: A New Legacy, released in 2021 and directed by Malcolm D. Lee, follows LeBron James and his son Dom trapped inside a digital server by a corporate AI called Algorithm, played by Don Cheadle with the face of a man who knew exactly what he was signing up for and did it anyway. To escape, LeBron has to win a basketball game against a team of digitally enhanced players. The plan is to recruit the Looney Tunes, and that's where the trouble begins. The film arrived carrying the weight of an expectation nobody asked for, but everyone had. The nostalgia attached to the original was strong enough that a halfway decent sequel could have done something with it. It didn't require brilliance, it required intent. And that intent, that basic desire to make something that works on its own terms, is precisely what's missing here, from the first frame to the last. The real conflict of the film isn't the game, it's the relationship between LeBron and Dom. The father can't see his son's talent because he expects him to be a basketball player, and the son wants to design video games. That's a perfectly reasonable arc, the kind of generational tension that actually resonates with people. A father who loves his kid but projects his own ambitions onto him. A son who has a genuine gift but can't get his dad to look at it. There's a real movie buried somewhere in that premise. The problem is that the screenplay has no genuine interest in developing it. It's introduced in the first 10 minutes, handled with the care of someone checking a box, and then abandoned for an hour while the movie does corporate advertising dressed up as adventure. The script treats the father-son tension like a loading screen between references, something to fill the space until the next franchise cameo shows up. And when the emotional resolution finally arrives in the third act, it lands with the hollow thud of something the film technically completed rather than actually earned. The entire middle section, which should be the heart of the story, is a promotional tour through the Warner Bros. Catalog. We pass through Harry Potter, Game of Thrones, Superman, Mad Max, the DC Universe, Casablanca, briefly and inexplicably. The references accumulate without rhythm, without narrative purpose, without any of them moving the story an inch. Each one lands with a kind of corporate cheerfulness, as if the film is waiting for you to recognize the thing and feel something because of the recognition alone. That's not storytelling, that's a theme park ride with worse queue management. What's particularly frustrating is that the film doesn't seem too aware of the difference between a reference and a moment. Ready Player One played a similar game and at least had the honesty to admit it was fundamentally a catalog. It wore its nostalgia on its sleeve without pretending the catalog had emotional stakes. Here, the film genuinely believes that showing you something familiar is the same as making you feel something. It isn't. The only moment where the pass actually lands is a joke about the name Jordan that half the audience probably didn't get because the kids in the theater didn't grow up with Michael Jordan. The parents who did are sitting there, 40 years old, processing how they ended up spending a Saturday afternoon watching this. The recruitment sequence, which structurally should be one of the most fun parts of the film, a classic gathering the team montage with Looney Tunes chaos, ends up being a string of disconnected scenes with no connective tissue between them. The editing is genuinely erratic. Not in any interesting or stylized way, just badly assembled. Scenes don't flow into each other. The tone shifts without warning or preparation. There are stretches where you lose the thread of what's happening and, more importantly, why it should matter to you. On the technical side, the animation does have visually inventive moments, particularly in the final game where the digital players become more abstract and the design allows itself to get genuinely strange. There's a sequence where the geometry of the court starts warping that briefly suggests a more interesting movie under this one. But that visual imagination is never connected to anything. It doesn't serve the story, it doesn't reflect the emotional state of the characters, it doesn't mean anything. It's spectacle disconnected from substance. The live-action photography is competent and flat. The music does its job without leaving any impression. Everything technical in this film exists to dazzle in the moment, not to build something that lasts. Now, let's talk about the characters, because this is where the film really loses the plot. LeBron James is not an actor, and the film doesn't ask him to be, which in theory could have been smart. Use what he actually is, a physically dominant, intensely focused competitor with genuine charisma in real life. The problem is that the screenplay gives him nothing to work with that plays to any of those qualities. The LeBron of this film is reactive. Things happen to him and he responds. He doesn't drive the story, he gets dragged through it. Michael Jordan was not a better actor. Technically, he was considerably worse. But Jordan had something the camera caught instinctively, a physical authority that didn't need dialogue to register. You believed he was the best in the world because the way he carried himself in every single frame said so. LeBron is perfectly competent at what's asked of him, and the screen still feels oddly empty when he's carrying a scene alone. Dom is the most interesting character in the film, and the most thoroughly wasted. His conflict with his father is the only thing in the screenplay that feels like it comes from an actual human experience rather than a studio meeting. He's a kid who's good at something his father doesn't value, trying to get seen by someone who loves him but isn't looking. That's real. There are 2 or 3 moments, brief ones, where the film almost takes that seriously. A look between them, a line that lands with more weight than the scene around it earned, and then the script moves on, because there's another IP to visit and Dom's feelings will keep until the third act needs them. His arc resolves in the climax through a plot device that the film set up specifically so it could use it here. It works mechanically, it does not work emotionally, because we spent so little time actually inside Dom's experience that when his moment arrives, we're watching it from the outside. The film tells us it's moving rather than making it so. Algae Rhythm, the villain, is a genuine waste of Don Cheadle. Cheadle is one of the more interesting actors working today, someone who can do menace and comedy and sadness sometimes in the same breath. The film uses him as a plot function. Algae's motivations are vague from the start and shift based entirely on what any given scene requires. He wants to be famous. He wants to be validated. He wants to destroy LeBron. He wants to win. None of these connect to each other in any coherent way, and the screenplay never gives Cheadle the space to build something out of the incoherence. He's doing what he can, which is more than the role deserves, and the gap between his effort and what surrounds him is one of the more depressing things about watching this film. The Looney Tunes are without question the best thing here. Bugs, Taz, Daffy, Granny, Lola, when they appear, the energy of the film shifts in a way that makes you realize what's been missing for the previous hour. There are 2 or 3 genuinely funny moments, jokes that work because they're built on the actual logic of those characters rather than just deploying them as recognizable shapes. Daffy in particular gets a few beats that land. The problem is structural. They take almost a third of the movie to show up, they're underused throughout the beam itself, and there is a Daffy Duck rap that I am choosing not to describe in further detail. The Looney Tunes in this film are proof that the material was always there. Someone just chose to put it in second place behind the catalog tour. What works? The final game has entertaining stretches. The Looney Tunes when they have space to breathe, the father-son premise, which is good enough that its failure feels like a genuine loss rather than just a missed opportunity. What doesn't, the narrative structure is a storefront dressed up as a story. The references are advertising wearing the costume of nostalgia. The villain has no coherent inner life. The editing undermines every sequence that might have had momentum, and the emotional core of the film, the thing it needed to make you care about everything else, is treated as a scheduling obligation. Space Jam: A New Legacy is a film for young children who won't clock the pacing issues, and for adults who want to see familiar franchises in motion without expecting anything in particular. If you identify with either of these descriptions, you'll probably have a fine enough time. If you're a parent who grew up with the original and hope for something that worked for both of you, it's going to be a slog. Not because it's a catastrophe, because it's a film that had the pieces for something better and chose the catalog instead. The Looney Tunes deserved more. They always do. Space Jam: A New Legacy is a movie for young children who won't notice the pacing issues and for adults who want to see familiar franchises in action without expecting anything in particular. If you identify with either of these descriptions, you'll probably have a fine enough time. If you're a parent who grew up with the original and hoped for something that worked for both of you, it's going to be a slug. Not because it's a catastrophe, because it's a film that had the pieces for something better and chose the catalog instead. The Looney Tunes deserved more. They always do. If you like this review, subscribe, and I'll see you soon in the next video.